been a few weeks since I've seen everybody here. Obviously, couple games since the last time I talked to you guys. A challenging couple games at that. Testing or presenting some adversity for us as a defense against two very good teams. Coming off of those both games, it was a lot of things to work on, improvements that need to be made, really across the board. Obviously starting with myself, and finding ways to put our guys in better positions. I think we've come through that, well. We've had, some really good meetings. Just finished a really good walkthrough, and excited about an opportunity to play against a really good opponent in a really tough environment in the division. So, there's ebbs and flows in the seasons, ups, downs. We understand that, but it's always about how you respond in those situations. And I think we've got a really good group here, a special group, and I'm confident we'll respond the right way.
Does not having Andrew Van Ginkel or not having had him give you more appreciation for how much he means to what you guys want to do?
I think we've got a lot of good players. I think Dallas has stepped in and played well. I think, but obviously Gink is a very important integral part to what we want to do defensively, how we play, his acumen, his athleticism, his versatility. But that's the NFL. I mean, everyone deals with injuries, and the next guy's got to be able to step up and play. And I think we've had several guys step in and play in his roles, whether it's E-Dub or Dallas, and do a good job. With that said, he's obviously a big part of our defense. I think he's getting close. But we'll just see how the week goes. As far as practice and getting in there, and there's a little bit of conditioning that's the part of that. But definitely excited to see him back out there a little bit, and we'll see where the week takes us. But yeah, he's a big part of the defense. But football is it's a game where it takes 11 guys. There's no one person who. I mean, obviously, guys have one or two players have major impact, but ultimately you got to get 11 guys on the same page, play after play after play after play, and that's really what we're looking for as a staff. What I'm looking for from our group, from our collective group.
When you look at the efficiency of Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, just how much of it was the rush versus the coverage versus the positions you're talking about that you're putting guys in?
I think they're good players. I think they're good players. They're well coached, and I think that's the National Football League. I think it's, that's the beauty of the league. That's what you love and you hate about it. I mean, there's ups, there's downs, there's good players. They make plays. Sometimes you're in position and they make it anyway. Sometimes you're not in position and you're upset about that. And those are the ebbs and flows of playing and coaching in this league. And quite honestly, it's what you love about it. And trying to find a way to, to bring the efficiency down against good players. We got that this week. Goff's as efficient as anyone in the league, but like I mentioned to Alec, it's a collect. You got to get 11 guys on the same page. Play after play after play after play, and I would say we've had some really good plays, and been in the situations that we want to be in, whether it's third and long or second and long, and situations like that. But we got to string them together and put them together, specifically in those kind of weightier moments. And that's what we're working on. I think we're always trying to improve and get better, and it's never perfect. But we come back in as upset, and not upset, but what's the word I'm looking for? Not necessarily motivated, but you're disappointed probably in a performance as you could be. You turn around, we get back up, we turn the tape on for the next opponent. We see their strengths, their weaknesses. We try to improve on the things that we didn't do well in that game or a couple of games, and get right back to it. And our guys have done that. This is a great group from that standpoint. They're fun to coach. There's still a lot of laughs in our meeting room, and I think you need that. And when things get a little bit, you hit a little bit of adversity, you just kind of band together, and that's I think that's what I've seen this week.
Why do you think the heavy personnel jumbo stuff is as in vogue right now as it seems to be?
There's I think there's several reasons. I think it's I think people want to run the football, control time of possession. Against a team that moves like we do, and can overload space, I would say, or surfaces. It's a way to not allow that. Always have an edge or always have an extra blocker. There's a way. That's an answer to that. When you do that, you're taking some other people off the field, and so there's a give and take there for every coordinator who's looking to do that. But certainly every teams want to establish a run game, establish a physicality, establish that, and we've got to do a better job of defending it. And I say that plainly. And it's something that we're obviously spending some time on. Detroit has it, but everybody's got it in some form or fashion. And is it in vogue? Yeah, I would say so. Against us for sure, and we got to do a better job.
Brian, in the games you guys have struggled to stop the run, is there a common thread that you're seeing? Obviously, you did it well against the Eagles and kind of struggled against Chargers.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything. I think I'll start with me. It's a little bit of coaching. I got to do a better job. I'm never going to be one to put it on the players and say, hey, this guy's got to do this guy's got to do that. No, I've got to do a better job of putting our guys in better positions, and then we've got to play, consistently. 11 guys on the same page. Everybody doing their job. Everybody, handling their responsibility. Play after play after play after play. There's good plays there too. There's no doubt about that. It just hasn't been consistent, and you focus on those good plays and say we need to do this every time, and that's football too. You get 11 guys, 11 different personalities, 11 different strengths, weaknesses, 11 different levels of acumen, 11 different, just 11 different, people, and those they change, week to week because due to injury or due to just different groupings, et cetera, and so we just got to work harder at that, which our guys are doing.
In terms of being on the same page, just why do you think this year's group has had a harder time finding that consistency with that?
I think you got to give credit to some of the offenses that we faced. I think they've done a nice job of whether it's via scheme or via just making a play. That certainly happened this year. I like our group. I'll say that wholeheartedly. I think we got a great group. They work well together. Every year's a little bit different, though. I think this isn't last year. This isn't 2 years ago. Every year in the National Football League is different. Different set of players. On both sides. Whether it's Detroit's different than they were last year, and the Chargers were different than they were last year, and we're different than we were last year. So every year you've got to essentially start over. And so I think it's hard to say, hey, this is why this year versus last year when every year's basically brand new year. That's just been my experience. And so we've got to find what's the best style of play for this year's group. And in some instances, there's been moments where it's like, okay, we found it. And then, in some others, there's certainly some improvements we need to make. And we're just going to continue on this journey and, stick together and, play against a really good team this week and try to, string good plays together, play after play after play.
Knowing that every year is a different year, but the Lions obviously went through the coaching change coordinator-wise. Are you seeing any fundamental differences in what they're doing? compared to what they have?
John Morton's obviously decorated, very good coach. And I think he plays to the strengths of the guys on the roster, like most good coaches do. And they've got a good quarterback; it runs through him. They got good receivers, they got good backs, they got a good O-line, and having that versatility or that variety allows them to have a balance offensively, where you load up on a run, they're going to pass it. You load up on a pass, they're going to run it. You blitz, they got screens. I mean, they've got an array of variety offensively, and so for us, it's fundamentals, technique, communication, everybody on the same page. Know where the premiums are. Setting edges. Being physical. Shedding violently. All those things that oftentimes are coach speak. Or viewed as coach speak. They're real things against really every team in the National Football League, but certainly this one. And their core has been together, and so to adjust or hey, they're doing this, so we can do this. Remember, we did this 2 years ago against so and so. They can do that. You know what I mean? And it's with their core players, and that's what makes them a really kind of tough team to defend. I think they've done a great job top to bottom, and look, it's going to be a great environment. They got a really good football team, and it's going to be a great challenge. But that's what we love. That's what we're here. That's what we're here for. That's what we love about the game. So we're excited.
I know you're focused on their offense, but did you know Cohen Shepard at all? What is your impression?
Somebody asked me about him the other day. I don't know him at all, but I think he's done a great job. I really do. And just kind of watch it from afar. I love his energy. I love, just his vibe, his energy, you can tell that, that group has kind of taken on his persona, and they have a play style that, and that's his persona, but that's also Dan's persona, and it was AG's persona when he was there, and that's just kind of, their personality, their identity. But he's somebody I was certainly going to, go say hello to and pay a little homage to pregame. So I'll be coming to talk to you, Shep.
Last couple.
Brian, you talked about setting the edges. Setting edges, is it just a physical challenge, or is there, can guys make mental mistakes setting an edge?
I mean, there's certainly a physical piece to it. Like, I can't go out there and set an edge, and that's and I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that there's definitely a physical piece to it. There's not anyone can go out there and do it. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because that's one of those things that you say it if it seems like it's an easy thing to do, but there's certainly a lot of technique, fundamentals, and a feeling, kind of an instinctive, they're moving in this direction. How do I either knock him back, where I could be inside of him and still set the edge, or stay outside completely? And if you run outside, you're just kind of creating we call it a dip in, dip out lane, which is not setting the edge at all. So yeah, there's some nuances to it, I would say. And oftentimes it can be heard as kind of coach speak, just set the edge and everything's going to be okay. But there's certainly a lot more to it. And some guys kind of do it easily. I think of guys, just going back to, New England. The first two guys I ever saw do it at a high level were Willie McGinnis and Mike Vrabel. And so it was, both of them were very instinctive, and obviously had been had been there before I was there, but coached in a way that they knew how to do that several different ways. Sometimes if they overset you, you can jump inside and the edge is set. That guy's outside of you, but the ball's not getting outside of you. And so we've got two good edge setters in, Gink, JG. Dallas is doing a much better job from that standpoint. And that's kind of, the starting point. Because if you just let them jog around the edge, there's nothing anybody else can do. So it's something that we certainly harp on.
Like, where is Grenard in his career at doing that, and where would you say is Dallas?
Obviously, JG is, further along in his career, so he's ahead of Dallas, but I think Dallas is certainly making a lot of improvement in that area, both physically and just kind of from an instinctive nuances standpoint, when to take a shot to jump inside, when to, knock him straight back. And so, we're still, working through a lot of that with Dallas. But he's a young player and he's doing a lot of really good things. And I think he'll continue to grow in that area for sure.
How much of that do they learn in college? I mean, how much, you always hear, when you talk about offensive linemen, the difference college and pro, but when it comes to setting edges in college compared to,
Yeah, there's a lot of college teams that don't set edges. They play what's called spill technique, where, they send everything to the sideline, which, the hashes are a lot wider, so you kind of want to use the sideline. So it's really kind of a new technique that's taught oftentimes when they get to this level. And I understand why. The hashes are so much wider, so you spill it, make it go to the sideline and use the sideline as a 12th defender. That, some teams do that in the NFL also. I think you got to be able to, use a little bit of both. But primarily we try to set edges here.
What have you liked the most about Jalen Redmond's development?
When I talk about Jalen or think about Jalen, there's just, I'm proud of the way he's kind of developed, how important it is, how urgent he is to develop, how he's, kind of stepping into or finding his voice as a leader. I think he's earned the respect of his teammates and really everybody in this building. And it's really just putting his head down, and it's hard work, which that sounds like coach speak also. But, it does. I know it does. But that's just what it is for that young man. And I think everybody knows the story of the UFL and getting here and putting his head down and working hard and learning. And it's a great story. But he's still going. He's still improving. We're still finding different ways for him to help the team, and he'll do whatever we ask. And he's just really put his head down and worked for it.
Thank you.
And hopefully it's a message that other young players, so when you write about that, you might want to stick that in there. Maybe somebody, I know a lot of everyone's reading. So.
What is it?
What's that?
Nose to the grindstone.
Nose to the grindstone. I like that one. Let's put that one in there too. Good to see you guys. All right.